Hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Show Day. My name is Diana Shabai Booker. I'm your host. And if you're wondering why we sound so much clearer today, it's because Two Show Day has gotten a big upgrade. And I'm sitting here with my producer, Mike McCord.
Hey.
Mike, tell us all about what's happening here.
No one knows. So here's the thing. So Diana, who works for Proctor's in Schenectady, Proctor's Collaborative, is great. And we love Diana. And you all obviously love Diana. So we decided to spread the Diana love as much as we could. We're doing this new thing at Proctor's. We are relaunching what we call collaborative studios. Yeah. So collaborative studios, we're going to make our own shows that are Proctor shows, but we're also going to help other content creators make their stuff. For myriad reasons, all of which are boring, it's actually really hard for Proctor's to make a show about Broadway. Yeah. So we thought, what better way to talk about Broadway than have someone else do it? So Diana is the owner, creator, the keeper of all of the things Two Show Day, and all we're doing is we're using the studio. We're going to put you out on a different feed, and make things better.
Yeah. So while I am an employee of Proctor's, this podcast is not a product of Proctor's, nor am I on the clock right now.
That is correct.
That's sort of how this is working.
Yes. It is independently owned and operated by Diana, and we just distribute it.
Yeah. And we're using the beautiful studios at Proctor's. You may hear some street noise or sounds of the building. It's an active theater, but I'm super excited for this next chapter here. And I believe our first guest has arrived.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yes. I'm going to go take my spot.
All right.
Here we go.
I'm going to go get him. So my first guest in our brand new studio setup is an actor and performer in the Capital Region. You may have seen him as Ernst in Spring Awakening, or in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at Slock, or as Pythio in Head Over Heels. Or we're going to get into this today because I need to talk about this as Whizzer in Falsettos. Please welcome Julian Hugo-Perez.
Hi,
Julian.
Hello.
Thanks for being here with me.
It's so good to be here and like super nervous, but also super excited.
Oh my God, me too. I'm so nervous, Tommy, all day. So tell me about your whole life story. How did you get here? How did you get into theater? Do you remember the first thing you ever saw or did?
Oh man, let's unpack. Okay, so growing up, I, like most kids, I think, got to go to a lot of shows through my school, like field trip. You know, your mom gives you some money and you go to a field trip. And so I got to do a lot of that. I'm from California originally. That's where I grew up. Yeah. So we had a lot of little local theaters nearby. I remember seeing, I think it was Peter Pan.
Okay.
Was the first show that I think I ever saw. And I remember thinking that these performers on stage were like beautiful.
Yeah.
Just like beautiful people. I thought it was so incredible, the ability of people in general to take their voices and their actions and put it on stage and tell this like crazy story that transcends times and spaces and places. And I thought that was really, really awesome. So like as a kid, I was like, oh, I really want to do this. My dad was not on board. My mom is Irish American. My dad is from Mexico. Okay. So he grew up very traditional.
Sure.
There's a little bit of a, I guess like there's a little bit of like a machismo type of thing in growing up Mexican, especially as a man. You tend to want your son to also have that same like personality, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it. Right. But he didn't think it was a great idea. Didn't want me to do that. Would rather I do sports or something that fit his kind of thing a little bit more. So, I mean, that brought tension there. And so I didn't really get to explore performing until way later when I was in like high school. Okay. So in high school, I decided to join the choir. And I had a really awesome choir teacher who was incredible. I thought this is what I want to do. I want to do music education. I want to go and be a choir teacher. And then he introduced me to doing shows.
Okay.
My first show was The Music Man.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Who were you?
I was ensemble.
Okay.
Which actually was really awesome. I was ensemble core dancer, which was crazy to me because I'd never danced a day in my life before that show.
And they said core.
They
Perfect.
said core dancer. I think it was because I was I was a big tumbler at the time.
Okay.
And so they were like, yes,
That's
make him do some flips. It'll be real fun.
Yeah.
So I just tumbled around the stage for the majority of that. That was back home at the company I used to do shows at with AVPRT. Big shout out. So once I got like done with Music Man, I realized I had been bit. Like I just had to do everything after that. I did Once Upon a Mattress, which was really fun. Again, another ensemble role. Up until like my last show that I did there was Little Mary Sunshine, which if you know that show, it's very problematic for so many reasons. And it continued to be problematic when we did it. And then after that, I shipped off to the University of Northern Colorado, where I double majored in musical theater and American Sign Language. And
what a double major. And that's also like has nothing to do with your current day job either, which
right. So we can unpack that. While I was doing those shows, I was also enrolled at a community college where I'm from. And I studied deaf studies and American Sign Language for some time. And I was really impressed when the Deaf West Spring Awakening had come out.
Yes.
And I decided I wanted to be a part of something Deaf West. Like if it ever happened again or if there were more shows being produced, I wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Because it married two worlds that I really fell in love with. I fell in love with American Sign Language and the deaf community. Yeah. And I also fell in love with musical theater. So I wanted to kind of mend those two worlds together. Once I was there, I just couldn't do it anymore. Like the community, the musical theater community in that area was quite toxic and not very inclusive and just was not great. So I dropped out of the school because I really couldn't like see myself spending the money that I was spending to go to school.
Sure.
Knowing that I don't know that something was going to come of it.
Yeah.
So then that's when I came into what I do now. So I decided I wanted to study veterinary medicine because I thought that would be fulfilling for me. And it has been. Oh, it's been challenging, but fulfilling. That's pretty much the story.
I just scheduled my two dogs' annual exams and I'm like, I'm so sorry for these poor vet techs I got to deal with my insane dogs.
But we love a mom that gets their kids going. You know what I mean?
Gotta keep them in shape.
Keep them in shape. Yeah. Exactly. So then I took like a big gap year of or a big gap 6 years actually of not doing shows because I had dedicated every ounce of my mind to being a vet tech and understanding what most like general kind of knowledge of veterinary medicine. So I took a big step out when I started doing shows again with Spring Awakening.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was kind of a more anxious time in my life. I'd been struggling with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression at that time. And I remember how shows had made me feel. So I was just like, Schenectady Community Theater, something. Just needed something.
Yeah.
And Spring Awakening came up and I lost all breath in my body because that's my favorite show.
That's the show.
And I was like, that's the show that I've always wanted to be in. Yeah. And it's so silly, but Ernst is the role that I've always wanted to play.
No way.
Yeah. Like I put on my sheet that I would take Moritz and wanted to play Moritz because I knew it was a little bit more of an involved part.
Right.
But I love Ernst's part. I think it's so touching to a lot of people that in such a small way, but I loved every second of it. And since then I haven't stopped. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Spring Awakening a little bit more because that's where you and I met. As you said, you played Ernst and I stage managed that. from your audition, I was immediately 100% platonically head over heels in love with you.
Oh my God, I love you. Stop.
And I don't know if you remember this, and I swear I'm not trying to like take credit for every role you've ever done at Slock. No. But at callback day, we had our 2 nights of auditions, then we made our callback list, and you were on our callback list, but you weren't there for callback day. And I was like, and we were checking off everybody. And I said to our producer, Amy, I said, what about Julian? And she was like, oh my God, I forgot to call Julian. And then of course you came back and you got the part. So you're welcome.
Thank you so much, because honestly, I was bummed, because I remember being at work the next day and I hadn't gotten any callback or anything. Yeah. And then I was heading home that night. It was around 7, so it was around callback time. And I said, well, it's like around 7. They didn't call me. I didn't get called back. It's okay. It's whatever. Like, there were tons of talented people in the room, because there were good auditions of talented people in the Capital Region. Yeah. Crazy amounts of talent out here. So once I literally had just gotten home. I was still driving. And I got a call from a number, and I was like, I don't know who this is. I answered, and I think it was Amy. Yeah. Amy said, hey, Julian, are you coming to callbacks? And I was like, I didn't know I got called back. So it turned out that like my email and my resume was different from the email that I put on the form.
Oh, and okay.
When they sent out callbacks, they sent out the email to the one that was on the resume that I didn't have access to anymore, so I had no clue.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what happened. So I remember showing up late to I had run in, gotten changed, driven over, and like I had walked in and everybody was like staring at me because I had come in through like that back door.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I was like,
late kid. Yeah.
I feel so weird right now. Please get me out of here. But it was incredible. And thank you so much.
Yeah. No, that felt like I was talking about this with Hannah in our last episode too. That was a very just serendipitous show. Cause like when I started with Slock, my first show was The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged. But after critique that night, I was just kind of hanging around cleaning up. And Jeffrey Hawking, who runs the box office and is on the board and does a million other things, said, Diana, we need to find another show for you. What show would you like to do? And I said, well, if I had my pick, I would pick Spring Awakening. And he said, I think they already have a stage manager, which they did, JJ Paul, or she's a married lady now. She's a different last name. But he said, let me hook you up with Brian, the director. And so I did. And I said, I'm willing to do whatever. I'll shine shoes. I'll move boxes, whatever. And he said, well, actually, JJ might want to audition. So let me talk to her. And so that's how it worked out.
Which I'm glad it did, because you were an incredible stage manager.
Thank you.
I felt like you were always on top of everything, and you probably knew the show better than any of us on stage did. Any of us on stage did. Because I had full faith that you were going to know where I was supposed to be at all times had I missed anything.
You were never a problem child.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but that was, a really joyful experience. The cast and crew were all just seemed amazing and at the top of their game. And I think that showed in that production too. I remember, I can't remember what reviewer it was. I think it was Nippertown or one of those that said this is one of the finest things that Slock has ever done.
Which was so crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like coming in as somebody who was brand new to Slock, it was so crazy to me because I had heard of Slock's history and I was like, wow, this is a pretty cool theater.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, growing up where I came from, like the company that I used to do shows with, they would rent out like the high school's auditorium to do the shows. Sure. So they didn't have their own theater. They like had a small like rehearsal space that was literally like those garages that like those like car repair shops have.
Sure. Yeah.
It was that. Like that's what we rehearsed in, which I mean it worked and we did do great shows there. But it it was just such a crazy experience. Spring Awakening in general was so insane. How the cast just like melded together.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was so insane how comfortable we all felt with each other so quickly. I think part of it is the show. That show is so heavy and there's so many like really crazy big moments in that show that I remember every night right before the funeral scene after Moritz dies. Me and Hannah would sit next to each other and hold hands.
Yeah.
And then behind us would be Annalie, Steve, and Emma. We would all hold hands and just felt that feeling of somebody that you love no longer being there, but also you have this community around you of people that care about you so much. So it was so crazy. And I'm so close to like 90% of that cast still to this day.
Yeah. And like that, so much of the show is about like vulnerability too, right? So like having to not have to act that because you feel comfortable to be vulnerable with all these people. It must be just an incredible experience.
It was super incredible. It was also like Ernst was it was one of those roles where like for me, Ernst was me. So it was like, oh, let me take care of this cute little child. Let me take care of myself because I didn't take care of myself before kind of thing. So it was incredible. It was really awesome. It was an amazing experience.
Love that so much. So now, I know you said you just started, but your next project at SLOC is Pippin.
Yes.
Which opens in May.
Yep.
Do you know the day of the opening night? Because I don't.
I do not.
SLOCtheater.org. It's sometime in May.
Yeah, it's somewhere on there.
But of course, Hannah's stealing all our thunder. She talked about Pippin in depth, but will you perhaps get to bring out some of your tumbling experience?
You know, it's in talks. It's in talks. So, I mean, it's been years, but it's in talks. Yeah. So maybe.
That I can't wait. The whole season at SLOC is like, I'm so excited. There's a lot of shows I've never seen in person before. Actually, every single show I had not, except for the one I worked on, I've not seen in person before. Yeah. So I'm so excited to see everything they do.
I'm really excited to see how it all like pans out after hearing concepts and like after sitting around and reading and getting to know people a little bit. I'm really excited. I mean, the ensemble's stacked for that show. There are so many incredibly talented people in that ensemble. There's so many like incredibly talented people in the cast in general. So I'm super excited to. I go into like every show with the thought that I'm going to learn something from someone. Yeah. Whether it be something acting wise, vocally, dance wise, or just like in general, I always know I'm going to learn something from someone. So I always go in pumped to learn something. So I'm really, really excited for that.
Yeah. That's a great outlook to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. To learn something. Cause like, I mean, art is all about feeling and experiencing and all that. So learning should be part of it too. And beyond just like learning your part or your line, something you can take with you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I learn something from every show that I'm in. Like because there's so much to theater. There's so much to acting. There's so much to like being a good vocalist or being, you know, whatever your definition of a good vocalist is, because everybody's definition is different. Yeah. So I don't know. I've learned something new from everything that I've done.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the meat of Two Show Day, as I like to call it. Julian, what is your show?
The show that I am talking about today, because I loved it, is Falsettos.
Yay!
Which I had the honor and privilege of playing Whizzer in SLOC's production. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Falsettos because it's an incredible show.
Absolutely. So give us the beats. Who is it written by?
Yeah.
What is it about?
I have my phone because I forgot my notebook. So I'm going to read very carefully. So the book was written by William Finn and James Lapine. William Finn kind of had written a lot of it prior to kind of having James Lapine jump in. He had written like a series of one acts. So he started with In Trousers, which talks about Marvin's. It's like a prelude to the falsettos that we know today.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was like, it's like the Marvin trilogy. Yeah. So there's sort of three short musicals about Marvin.
So that one, In Trousers, is about Marvin finding out that he is attracted to men and kind of going through that process. It did horribly off Broadway. So at that time, actually, William Finn was like, maybe this isn't my thing. I'm going to go to medical school.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to interject real quick because this James Lapine connection is so funny because, okay, so we're saying this, that he did In Trousers and it was bad. And then he, started writing the March of the Falsettos and Falsetto Land.
Yeah.
And that's when James Lapine came in.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with Stephen Sondheim. When Merrily failed, he was like, I'm going to get into video games of all things, is what he wanted to do. And then he started writing Sunday in the Park with George with James Lapine, which then won the Pulitzer.
As somebody who has gone from musical theater to a medical field,
Yes.
I get it though. It's like, how far away can you possibly get from this?
How far left brain can I get from right brain?
From this thing.
So funny. So shout out James Lapine,
Yes.
musical theater savior.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. But yeah, no. So like he had written In Trousers. It failed. He was like, I'm going to go to med school.
Yeah.
Science was not his forte. He didn't like science. So he came back and he wrote March of the Falsettos and Falsetto Land.
Yeah.
And then included James Lapine, and that's when we have Falsettos.
Yeah.
So lyrics and music were written by William Finn as well. It was directed by James Lapine originally, and then he also directed the revival, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it premiered originally April 29th, 1992. Had a really awesome cast, one of which was Carolee Carmelo.
Yes. Local girl Carolee Carmelo.
Yes,
Come on the podcast, Carolee.
Yes, who is a SLOC alum.
Is she really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
She did the Music Man back in 1989 at SLOC.
God. Was she Marion?
I don't know who she was.
That would be hilarious if
I
she
think
was
she was ensemble, but I'm not 100% sure. And then she moved to the city and did Angels in America, and then ended up doing Falsetto. She was the original Trina for a little bit, and then she was the original Cordelia, I believe, if I researched correctly.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so that was really awesome to know. When they had first premiered it, the producers, I think their last names were Weaslers. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
They decided, they were a married couple, and they wanted to incorporate art by Keith Haring, who was a huge AIDS activist at the time.
Yeah.
He had died before they premiered the show. I think he died in like 1990. But they incorporated his art. They were a little nervous because they knew that he had died of AIDS, so they were a little nervous about it being passed off as like an AIDS show.
Sure.
But like it stuck. I mean, our art was also Keith Haring art.
I was wondering
inspired
about
by Keith Haring.
That Keith Haring connection, because so much of the art is like that, or it's an homage to that. But that was an intention from the beginning.
It was super
That's really
intentional.
cool. Yeah.
And then some of the notable productions was the 1992 original Broadway cast. I think the most well-known is probably a 2016 revival cast.
That's the one I'm most familiar with. Yeah.
The 1992, I think, is less known because it was less tolerated at the time.
Sure.
The subject matter was probably not the most tolerable subject matter. It was, I think, a little bit more like valid at the time, considering some of the subject matter. But
yeah, I can kind of see that. Like, in 1992, the AIDS crisis is still burning. You probably don't want to go sit in a theater and watch this happening when you're
nervous about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see how that happens, but that's why revivals happen.
Yes.
Right.
That is true.
And there's the pro shot of that cast too, which makes it
a lot more
accessible.
Yeah. Super accessible. And then some of the other cast members, Andrew Reynolds, obviously it's incredible. Tracy Toms, I love her so much. Stephanie J. Block, some of the the people that are super well known. I mean, the whole cast was stacked and incredible and amazing. Some of the songs that stood out to me during that show the most, I Never Wanted to Love You, smacked me in the face almost every night. I thought that one was it's such an incredible song. Yeah. It's so pretty. Everything about it is super, super pretty. Yeah. The chess game song was, I think, the hardest thing. Shout out to anybody who's ever had to play Whizzer or Marvin, because that song is ridiculously difficult to get right. The no, sir, yes, please, all that like weird interjected, and then you're moving pawns at the same time. Like Melissa Lassian. I asked her how to say her last name before this because I wanted to make sure I knew how to. I think it's Latzian, actually. The director, she wanted us to. She had like a specific movement plan for the chessboard. She wanted us to move certain pawns at certain times.
Okay.
And like towards when we actually put it on stage, she was like, you know what? She's like, just
drop it.
Just move whatever you can, because it was so hard to like actively know where we're moving these pawns and get the words right every time.
Yeah.
It was just not. I said, I don't know.
I can move these pawns, or I can get the words
but
right.
You know
I
what?
can't
She
do
was
both.
so incredible during the entire process that she was just like, hey, do what works for you.
Yeah.
And if it looks funny, I'll let you know. Which was all I needed.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
There you go.
And then big shout out to Leslie Elishuk, because she also nailed down those like timing things for us over and over.
She was a music director.
Yes.
Right?
I can't tell you how many times me and Sean messed that sequence up. And she was like, let's just come back again. It's okay. We're just going to run it again.
Yeah.
With like the most positive attitude.
No.
So that was incredible.
Yeah. The whole show is sung through, basically.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's like hard on your voice too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yeah.
Personally, like when we did it, I was sick for every one of those performances.
Really?
Really badly,
Oh my
actually. So like the first week I was like, gosh, I'm feeling like really funny. Like my mom had flown out from California to come see it. And I was feeling like hot and cold, and I had chills, and I was like, oh, I have a fever. Like this is like something.
You got too method.
Something going on. Right. No. So in my head, I'm like, oh my God, did I just like really get into it? My body was like,
right.
Here you go. Here's your fuel. But no, like I think I thought I had cat scratch fever because I had gotten scratched by a cat beforehand, and the cat had tested positive for Bartonella, which is what causes that. So I was like, oh, it must be something like that. And I had gone to a doctor, and they were like, yeah, it's that. It was not that. I had tonsillitis.
Oh my God.
So
Perfect.
I had been taking the wrong antibiotics for a while, and then they put me on the right antibiotics. By that time, it was show week number 2, and my voice was like, no, girl, you're done. But
I saw show week 2, and it was amazing.
Well, thank you. So story beats for Falsettos starts off with Marvin once he's left Trina, who's his wife. Marvin's kind of like this neurotic Jewish man who's I think in his like 30s or 40s, and he's got one kid, and he's trying to make it all work. Whizzer's like his boyfriend that he really wants Whizzer to love him the same way that he loves Whizzer. He's trying to force Whizzer into like this weird like housewife like type of situation.
Marvin is very obsessed with he literally says, I want it all. So he wants it all, but he's also very obsessed with this traditional family structure while being with his boyfriend, but who's he's trying to put in this feminine housewife position, but he's also making his ex-wife do the same things. It's
kind of funny, but like in a way I identify with the feeling of wanting everything to be right and like non-confrontational and just get along. That's all I want. So like I understand it from that perspective.
And he doesn't want things to change. Right? Like, he wants Whizzer, but he also wants this.
Right. He wants everybody to get along. He wants everybody at the dinner. He wants everyone to just be okay with the fact that he chose this new life for himself.
Right.
And you're just going to have to be okay with it, Trina. Like, sorry.
She's not okay with it.
She's not okay with it. As we find out later,
Yep.
she has a pretty bad mental breakdown.
Which is hilarious and wonderful.
Yeah, I'm breaking down, which Brittany slayed.
Absolutely.
Slayed.
So funny.
So, yeah, breaking down happens. She kind of has this mental breakdown, invites Mendel over to her house to talk to
Yes.
Jason. Mendel is the psychiatrist who was Marvin's psychiatrist.
Yep.
Kind of now it's not.
Yep.
Mendel and Trina kind of have a thing for each other. And then Mendel, within maybe the span of like a month or two, I really don't know where the time frame is there, but he's like, hey, do you want to get married? And Trina's like, yeah, that sounds
sure.
good. And then Trina kind of laments her life a little bit. She talks about men and how silly men are, how childish men are, but that she's still going to get married to this man because she just wants just like a little bit of love and peace and security and wants to feel important to someone, I think. So she decides, yeah, I'll marry you, whatever. March of Falsettos happens, which is real creepy. And then we kind of go to the chess game where Whizzer and Marvin have this like big blowout, essentially, which was really fun.
Yeah.
But also I think it's just like a pileup of so many things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Whizzer's tired of being treated like a housewife.
Yeah.
He's tired of Marvin making him feel like he's stupid or like he's not smart enough to be with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't have to deal with this. I can just give you all this crap and you're going to get mad and storm off and whatever.
Right.
Except this time, Marvin says, here's a suitcase, pack your bag, you're out. So then kind of goes into Never Wanted to Love You, where they all kind of, or actually it's Marvin hits Trina and then Never Wanted to Love You.
Yeah. Yeah. So much for everyone. Let's get along with each other until Trina gets remarried. And then he hits her.
And then he hits her, which is crazy.
Bastard. Yeah.
Yes. Bastard to the max. So then Never Wanted to Love You is kind of like everybody's like, well, screw you, because I never wanted to love you, but here we are.
Right.
Kind of situation. So that happens. Then we go into Act 2.
Yes. Hold up. I want to talk about these are the games I play first.
Okay.
Because I said at the top of the show I'm obsessed with you, but I'm like very obsessed with you when you're like maybe I just haven't heard you express your range this much, but like these songs are not easy, and both of your solos just blew me away.
Thank you so much.
And like what was it like doing that and rehearsing that?
So the games I play was what I auditioned with.
Okay.
Because I'm basic and sometimes I just like to take the songs from the show and I don't feel like going and extrapolating and trying
they're
to
gonna
think
make
of,
you sing it anyway.
Right. So I was like, I'm just gonna go in and sing the song.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wasn't gonna audition for the show at all.
Oh really?
This is my sister's favorite show.
Okay.
She loves the show so much and she was like, Julian, you have to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to. She's like, no, but you have to.
Yeah.
So I went.
Yeah.
I was actually really shocked because there was a ton of talented people in that room. The process of getting that song to where it was, though, by the time we were actually performing was kind of lengthy. I mean, it was a lot of me practicing at home because we had to work on group numbers a lot as a whole because the music was so complicated. The lyrics were so complicated.
Yes.
That we just had to sit down and pound out a lot of the music as a group. So a lot of the solo stuff, at least for me, was I did a lot of it at home.
Mm-hmm.
One night, I think I had been driving home from rehearsal and singing the song. And I was like, what if I did like a little riff here? Like a little fun little like judge it up a little.
Sassy little riff.
Yeah, sassy little riff. And I sent it to Leslie, the music director, and she was like, I love it. Keep it.
Yes.
Do it every night. Go. Go do you.
I love that.
So that one was a little bit less difficult to get on its feet. The other one was...
You got it I sometime.
Yeah, that one was hard.
Yeah.
I had to really think about that one a lot.
Yeah. That one's a heartbreaker. The games I play is a little bit like, it's not that you don't act in it, but it's a little more of a park and bark.
Yeah.
But yeah, the games I play, you were actively in a hospital bed.
Yeah. So like that one was a little bit harder to, I had to kind of think about that song a little bit.
Yeah.
Because hearing it, I told myself I didn't want to watch Falsettos before I did it because I didn't want to influence anything.
Sure.
So when I would hear it and like heard Andrew Rannells singing it, it sounded very like, oh, it kind of sounds like he's at peace with it, but it also kind of sounds like he's kind of getting his last little quips in.
Right.
But then actually being in the show and seeing the circumstances that lead up and realizing how sick he probably actually is and feels. And then also, I think anybody who's been through losing someone before knows that there is definitely a grief cycle that goes on with that person who knows that they're not going to be here much longer.
Right.
I had to really buckle in and think about, okay, yeah, he's probably at peace with it, but also he's probably pissed.
Yeah.
He's like probably pissed that he's finally at a good spot in his life.
Right.
Where like he's with somebody he really cares about. Him and Jason are very close throughout the show. So he has this like son-in-law essentially that, or not son-in-law, stepson. Stepson that he feels very close to.
Yeah.
And now he's like not going to be there.
Right.
So
yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about it, but you're so right. Yeah. Like, okay, Act 2, but Marvin and Whizzer get back together, and Marvin has this gorgeous song about how much he loves Whizzer and how we're going to do it right this time, and Mendel and Trina are doing well, and everyone's preparing for Jason's bar mitzvah, and it's like great. And of course, and then we have the lesbians from next door who are just icing on the cake.
From next door, love them.
They just come in and they're on fire.
The
right
first
away.
night they came out and they were like, it's the lesbians from next door. And the audience just went nuts, crazy. And it was amazing. Yeah, it was so incredible.
Good. But it's like in Act 2, we finally have this non-traditional, but definitely a family unit, and everyone is getting along. And now we're going to lose a big part of it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, actually one of the biggest, or like one of the hardest parts for me to put away after the show, because like when you're on stage and you're doing these things, everybody acts different. I consider myself a singer before an actor. I consider myself a singer and a mover before an actor, and I'm not a good dancer. So like I consider myself all those things before an actor, but I think everybody acts a little bit different. So for me, I just, especially for that last scene, the bar mitzvah scene, I just thought, oh my God, I am never going to see this child ever again. I'm never going to see him grow up. I'm never going to see him get married. I'm never going to see him have his first child. I'm never going to see all these things that are important to this child that I've come to love. I think there's also a sense of guilt, whether the disease was transmitted to Marvin or Marvin transmitted the disease, whatever the case is. I think there's a certain sense of guilt also that Whizzer carries, that now this man that I love is also sick, and he's also not going to get to see his child grow up and, do all these things. All these things that every parent, I think, wants to do with their child and wants to see their child go through. So that part, that was like what really drove that scene for me. And it took a lot for me to get rid of that after, of just being like, okay, but like that's him and you're you and you're fine. But that show was so like personal, I think, to me in so many ways. After the fact, I had no idea what that show was about when I auditioned. I had no idea what it was about. I had no idea who Whizzer was supposed to be. But in that show, I found a lot of personal similarities. I found a lot of just things. I think being a gay person or a gay man in this time, well, gay, like cis man in this time, I think we often take for granted a lot of the things that the people that came before us had to deal with.
Right.
I mean, like back in the 1980s, like HIV and AIDS was called the gay cancer, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then they changed it over to GRID, which was gay related immunodeficiency disease, which again, crazy.
Yeah.
And it took a while for them to be like, hey, this actually affects more than just gay people.
Right.
Why don't we call it HIV AIDS?
Right.
Which like disproportionately it affected very heavily, like heavy crowded area, like crowded cities.
Right.
It affected people of color more often than anybody else. I mean, Latino and Black people that would get it more disproportionately than others because there was less access to healthcare for them. They were not, like, actually in general, like gay people in general at that time were not educated very well on how to be safe when they're having sex.
Yeah. Like,
so I consider myself so lucky now. I mean, we have so many things now. It wasn't until like 1996 that ART was like the anti-retroviral therapy that they would do. Wasn't until then that like 1996 that bought a lot of time for some people. And now we have like people that are like undetectable who like can't even pass the disease. I mean, we have so many advancements now that are crazy. And that show made me feel so lucky to be living in a time where we have all these tools at our disposal. There's so many things, like there's PrEP now too, like the pre-exposure prophylaxis. Yeah. I urge anybody who's active to go and get the things that you need.
Yeah.
I mean, there are online resources where you can get it for free. You can go to your doctor, get what you need, people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You think about shows that, or any piece of art that heavily features or, you know, deals with the AIDS crisis. There's Falsettos, there's Rent, and, you know, they're period pieces now. But like, how many incredible gay visionaries didn't live
to
through
see
this
it.
crisis?
Yeah.
Like, what would our art world look like if these people had lived?
Right. Like, it's just so... while we were doing the show, a lot of people were like sharing people that they knew, like that were on the AIDS quilt that's in Georgia.
Yeah.
A lot of people were telling their stories, and it was just really incredible to get to know those people's stories.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was so personal and was such a big connection for me. It was, these are all incredibly talented, incredibly visionary people. Somebody loved these people. They loved somebody. So it was like, I'm like at a loss for words. I like remember doing the show and feeling so lucky to like have had all these people that come before me that weren't able to get the same access to healthcare and weren't able to get the same access to things that we have now, and just felt so just lucky to live in the time that I do live in, and that we've advanced as far as we do, because there are so many people that didn't, and they were incredible people, and they contributed so much, but maybe didn't live to see those contributions. So I thought that was that part is like a big, I think, was like a big deal for me for that show. Yeah. And like I carried that. I don't know, like it's my favorite show now. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous show. If someone has never seen or heard Falsettos before, what's the best way, do you think, to get into it?
Oh, probably watching the revival cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most accessible.
They're so good. I feel like it's on Broadway HD or something like that. Yeah, so it's probably you can get it pretty readily. But if there's a production near you, you should go see it. I also loved the set design.
Oh my God, yes.
Falsettos, Jenny Sinnott, who is just also a visionary. And like, I loved the skyline too, which I know she hand dremeled and gave herself carpal tunnel or something like that, which was amazing. But then also the set pieces were like sort of these big block pieces, which I think was sort of an homage to the revival, but they all like were super colorful. And then at intermission, they all moved around, and I was like, "What?"
Yes,
that was part of the show.
It was such a huge like vision, and it was so awesome when it was finally on stage, and like we were able to play on it. There was one night, this kind of set related, kind of prop related, but we had wheeled the bed out that I die in. And they had forgotten to lock it in place.
Okay.
And on top of that, Helen, who played Dr. Charlotte, had to put an IV like with tape on my arm. Well, she had placed it. I was sitting there acting as sad as I could. And then she tripped on the IV line and it ripped it down.
I may have been there that night.
Maybe. Because then she walked off stage, and she told me this later, which I thought was like hysterical. She walked off stage and she had told Michael Comello, who played Mendel, who I love dearly.
Me too. Yeah.
She had told him, "You're a doctor in this show. Just put it back on him. You're also a doctor, so you can do that." And I don't know if he just didn't hear her, he couldn't find it, but he didn't. So I, under my sheet while I'm sleeping, quote unquote, after days like this, I like had my arm and I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going to do a cute little yawn and tape that back in place." Yeah, there were so many funny things.
I love that.
So many funny things.
Well, thank you. That's a wonderful show. I had it on my list to do too, but it was so good to get your perspective on it from someone who has been inside of it. So
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me talk about it and ramble on.
Oh my God, of course. Okay. Speaking of weepy family dramas,
yes.
My show is Next to Normal. Have you seen this show?
I have not, but I have heard some songs from it.
Yeah, so it was written, book and lyrics by Brian Yorkie. The music is by Tom Kitt. It was directed by Michael Greif. Speaking of Rent, he was the original director of Rent and Dear Evan Hansen and some other things. So he's like the rock musical guy.
Love that.
Premiered 2008 off Broadway, 2009 on Broadway. Other notable productions, it just had a production in the West End last year with Casey Levy as Diana. Some other notable cast members, Alice Ripley, Brian Darcy James, Aaron Tveit, Jennifer Damiano, Marin Mazzie, and Casey Levy. So, yeah. It also won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. It's one of only 10 musicals to ever do so. Rent is another one of them. Okay, maybe we should have done Rent.
That, maybe. But I mean, that's okay. I love that.
Yeah. So, the characters, there is Diana, who is the main character. She's a mother. She has bipolar disorder. Those are her two big defining traits. There's her husband, Dan, her children, Gabe and Natalie, Natalie's boyfriend, sort of on-off boyfriend, Henry, and Diana's doctors. So not only does Diana have bipolar, but she's also hallucinating visions of her son, Gabe, as a teenager when Gabe died when he was 18 months old. So the musical follows her and her family as they try to adapt to this life. Diana goes through several failed treatments and medications, which she flushes down the toilet at the suggestion of her ghost son. So he's kind of more the devil on her shoulder.
Antagonist,
yeah. So her daughter, Natalie, who is actually alive, she is an overachieving high schooler. She's frustrated by her mother's obsession with her brother. At one point, Diana tells Natalie, "I love you as much as I can," which is such a heartbreaking line.
I remember that, actually.
Yeah.
I think like most guys who sing musical theater songs, we've all sung Superboy and the Invisible Girl with someone at some point.
Or I'm Alive.
I'm alive. Oh my God. Do you remember her Spring Awakening auditions? How many times did you hear that song?
Everybody. That one. And for women, it was Flowers from Hadestown.
Yes. I remember that. I remember hearing I'm Alive at least 10 times.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm so thankful I came with the Carrie song. I'm so thankful.
Yep. Stop singing I'm Alive. We
Yeah.
get it. Okay. So Natalie turns to partying and drug use to try to deal with these situations. This leaves the husband, Dan, caught in the middle of all of this, trying to care for his ill wife, trying to keep the family together, still grieving his son, perhaps at the cost of his own mental health. So, like I said, Gabe is really kind of the devil on her shoulder. He pushes her away from help, from medication, from her doctors. He even pushes her to attempt suicide at one point. And she's kind of doing this all by trying to lure Diana and telling them this is how they can be together again, is by her being dead too. So it's like, it's a rock musical too. And it's like, the songs are really upbeat despite dealing with this really dark content too. I wouldn't say it's like, Falsettos has some really genuine, like funny and heartwarming moments. These have fewer than that for sure. So I'm Alive is a great number. I Am the One is a great number. I Miss the Mountains is a great number, where she's talking about her new medication just makes her like, just nobody can see what I'm doing. Just like flatline emotions, and she misses being off her medication when she had big peaks and lows.
Waves,
and that's when she flushes her thing down the toilet. So it's crazy. And I don't want to give too much away, because I think, there's some good surprises in here at the end. But I stayed away from the show from a long time. Maybe it was because the main character is named Diana, and I didn't want to hear Diana is crazy all night long.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I hear you, sis.
So, but I did see this show when I lived in North Dakota at the Empire Theater Company in 2019. And it was a really brilliant cast. I can't remember everybody that was in it, but I remember really being really, really impressed by it. And though after seeing it, I think I connect most with Natalie's character. I wrote this down very specifically. I said, though my life is and was nowhere like this, I do connect with Natalie's character. And I want to say very explicitly, because I know my mom is listening, this is not a slight at my mom or my family or anything. She did such a good job. Mom, I love you so much.
Shout out to the mom.
Shout out Barb. I love her.
Yes, I love you, Teresa. Love you.
But my brother has a disability, and I often felt like Natalie does, and I felt like so much more was expected of me because I didn't have a disability. And I felt, probably incorrectly, but I felt that he got more attention than me because he needed more attention. This isn't to say that my feelings were correct or that my parents and my brother did anything wrong, but that was kind of my way into this show.
But I feel like that's such a valid feeling when, I think in general with siblings, when one sibling maybe gets a little bit more attention than the other.
Right.
There's always that like, oh, I have to overcompensate to kind of level the playing field.
Right.
So I mean, that's such a valid feeling.
Yeah. And there's lots of ways into this show to say too, right? You don't have to have experience with bipolar or know somebody. Like there are these other characters that can get you there and that you can relate to for sure. Oh, and I wanted to pair this with Falsettos because they're both weepy drama family musicals. But they also both discuss what our idea of what a normal family looks like. Literally in the title for this, and Falsettos also actually says what is normal.
Yes.
And every family can and does look different, and being true to yourself is sometimes better for that unit than suppressing who you are.
I feel that heavy because like during Falsettos, I didn't realize how dysfunctional that family was.
Right.
But it was like functional towards the end.
Right. But that's kind of when everybody gets to spread their wings a little bit more, right? Marvin is with Whizzer, and Trinda. I love that. Trindle.
Hashtag Trinda.
Trinna and Mendel are together, and I'm imagining it's a healthier relationship than whatever Trinna and Marvin's looked like when he was bringing home syphilis and all kinds of things.
And all things. That was such a hepatitis. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love that though. I think that more like there should be more spotlights on these strange families that don't necessarily work, because that's how most families are.
Right.
There is no functional family out there that's like 100% fully functional. There's always that one person in the family. There's always somebody that somebody has to talk about.
Right.
It's all dysfunctional. Yeah. And that's just how we work.
Right. That Norman Rockwell image of a family does not
No.
exist. Even when it looked like that, that's not what it actually was.
Because there was still problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if not even like problems, but just, people, trying to fit into that image is like,
Right.
no, that's not who you are.
Right.
That's not good for you.
So like fitting into that image caused so much other tensions.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
so many different families.
Yeah.
There's no functional family, guys. It's all dysfunctional all the time.
Yeah. And I have that written down here. A family isn't necessarily a mother and father and children, but like my family is my husband and my dogs. And my family is also my parents and my step parents and their families. And all of that gives us support as opposed to trying to cram something.
100%. Your family is who you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be blood. It's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to have a very amazing blood family, but I also have a crazy, like, amazing friend family that I've surrounded myself with.
Yeah.
So it's family subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think these two musicals are kind of subvert the idea of what like a capital B Broadway musical is, right? Like there's no high kicks, there's no showgirls,
Right.
There's no tap dancing, unfortunately.
Well,
Well,
I mean, March of the Falsettos could have.
Excuse me.
I mean, you could do some there. We did not because none of us could tap. But
tap dance.
I would love a tap dance.
Yeah.
I would die to see a tap dance in that.
Please, somebody do an
Somebody
all tap
do it.
falsettos.
Can you imagine like right before the little fart like slapstick? That would be incredible. I would love a tap before that.
Let's do a cabaret where you just like redo numbers
Please,
of old
yeah.
shows. Love
Somebody
it.
teach me how to tap so I can do this, please.
That's my secret dream. I am not a performer, even a little bit, but I would love to know how to tap dance.
It would be fun.
Oh, yeah.
I would have fun.
Someone do an adult tap class. Please.
Yeah, somebody please do an adult tap class and let me and Diana do it for free. Thank you.
We'll add it to class. But a big like complaint of like non-musical people are like, oh, this isn't believable that people just break out into song.
Yeah.
Fucking whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For like,
we're gonna believe that Timothy Chalamet is like
okay, but you're coming to see a show,
right? Like a king of some dust planet, but I'm not gonna believe someone breaks out into song.
Right.
But these are two shows where it's like very based in reality.
The thing when people say that and they know that musical is in the title,
I hate it.
I'm like, you came to see a show. We're giving you a show. What do you want?
Right.
Did you just want music in the background?
I could go on forever about all the things that people say why I don't like musicals or why I don't like theater. Like, oh, I saw a bad show one time. It's like, okay, well, did you see a bad movie one time and stop seeing movies forever?
Like, I don't get it.
Drives me crazy.
I don't get it.
Drives me crazy. But if you are one of those people and you don't like tap dancing or whatever, both of these shows are very much like
they're super accessible to you
Yeah.
because there's no weird dancing. Except for maybe a little bit in falsettos.
just go to the bathroom during March of the Falsettos.
Like as soon as Trina's done with her first part of her song, just
quietly excuse yourself.
quietly excuse yourself. That's your time. Go.
Yeah, gather and return.
I think it's like 2 minutes. Come back after 2 minutes and you'll be right on track for the end of Trina's song and chess game.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
But yeah, thank you so much for being
Of
here.
course.
It's so
Thank you for
wonderful
having me.
to talk to you.
Yes.
Yay.
It's been fun.
Yay.
Two Show Day is created and hosted by Diana Shabai Booker. It is executive produced by Diana and is produced and edited by Michael McCord. You can contact Two Show Day at twoshowdaypodcast@gmail.com and find all our socials on Linktree at linktr.ee/2showday. Two Show Day is independently owned by Diana Shabai Booker. It is part of the Collaborative Studios network. All opinions expressed herein are not necessarily the opinions of Collaborative Studios, Proctor's Collaborative, or any of its affiliates or partners. If you're interested in becoming a part of Collaborative Studios, you can reach us at collaborativestudios@proctors.org.